Welcome to the Kansas Department of Agriculture Animal Facilities Inspection Program Learning Module. This module will go over certain records requirements for all facilities holding an Animal Facilities Inspection Program license in the state of Kansas. Although there are several different types of records required to be maintained under the Kansas Pet Animal Act statutes and regulations, such as a contingency form, this module will focus specifically on the identification records required to be maintained. All Kansas-licensed pet animal facilities must follow the statutes, rules, and regulations adopted under the Kansas Pet Animal Act, which is collectively referred to as KPAA. KPAA sets the minimum standards each facility must adhere to in order to remain compliant and avoid enforcement action being taken against the license. Enforcement action could include civil penalties, license suspension, license revocation, and criminal charges. Licensees are expected to read, learn, and understand the KPAA as part of the licensing process. You can find a document that consolidates all Kansas Pet Animal Act statutes and regulations onto a single PDF file on KDA's Animal Facilities Inspection Program webpage at www.agriculture.ks.gov/AFI. Once there, scroll down a short distance to where you see the words Pet Animal Act underlined. It will look just like this picture on the bottom of the slide. You can click on that link to find a complete copy of the KPAA, which can be printed or saved to your computer for quick reference. If you do not have access to the internet or our website, another option is to contact our office to request a printed copy of this PDF be mailed to you. Our contact information is included at the end of this presentation. The records requirements for identification of animals are listed in Regulation KAR 9.18.7. We will go through each subsection of this regulation in the following slides. KAR 9.18.7a requires all licensees to maintain records for every animal that is purchased, acquired, held, transported, sold, or otherwise disposed of in any other manner. Some of these terms are not defined in regulation, so we apply the ordinary meaning of the term. So the ordinary meaning of purchased and sold would include any scenario when consideration is given for ownership of an animal or otherwise when the animal is transferred on the condition that something of value is given in exchange for the animal. This would include any fee, compensation, an exchange in services, a promise to reimburse or pay for something as a condition for the person to transfer legal or physical possession of the animal, etc. The term acquired would include obtaining an animal via a purchase or sale, but otherwise just means any other way of coming into ownership of the animal, which can include when an animal was surrendered, relinquished, or otherwise gifted to the licensee, either directly by a previous owner, or after the animal was seized by animal control officers, such as in a cruelty case, an administrative seizure, or other scenario. The term held would include when an animal is housed by or maintained by the licensee at the licensee's licensed premises, such as for boarding, for example, or anywhere else by the direction or control of the licensee, or when the animal temporarily resides on the premises for any length of time. The term transported would include taking or carrying animals from one place to another by means of a vehicle, aircraft, or ship. The phrase disposed of in any other manner could simply mean euthanasia, but essentially is just when the licensee no longer has ownership or physical or legal possession of the animal, or if the animal is otherwise no longer under the custody or control of the licensee. It does not matter how long a facility has established legal ownership, possession, custody, or control over an animal. A written record must be generated and then kept for each animal for the length of time required by the regulation, which we will discuss next. After the action, which must be recorded, has occurred, KAR 9.18.7b requires a licensee to store each record on the premises where the animals are or were located for each animal for the remainder of the current license year and 2 license years after that, and to make the records available for inspection. These records can be in paper or electronic format. They just have to be printable and readily available upon request. KAR 9.18.7a, subsection 1, requires the record for each dog or cat to individually contain certain detailed identification information once it reaches weaning age. Weaning age is considered at least 8 weeks old, able to eat solid food, and no longer nursing for at least 5 days. The regulation then goes through what information at minimum is considered identification information. It uses the word include to indicate the minimum required information, which means that any other information considered to be identification information must be maintained, and that at minimum those requirements in paragraphs A through C must be met. The acquisition information for each animal in paragraphs A and B includes, at a minimum, the name and address of the person from whom each animal was acquired, and the date each animal was acquired. The records shall also include a description of the animal. The description shall include the following information: the animal's age. A birth date is preferred, but an approximate age is allowed if birth date is unknown. The animal's size. This could include a weight or an approximation of adult size: toy, small, medium, large, giant, etc. The color markings. The sex or gender. If applicable, this must also include a notation that the animal is spayed or neutered. The species, for example, canine or dog. The breed. If the breed is unknown, an educated guess will suffice. If present, any additional identification, such as a tag, microchip, tattoo, etc., must also be included as part of the description of the animal. Any information regarding administered vaccinations must be maintained as part of each animal's record as well. The records must also include disposition information for each animal. The disposition information must include, at a minimum, the date the animal was given away, sold, adopted, etc., the name and address of the person to whom the animal was given, sold, adopted, etc., and the method of disposition. The method of disposition can include sold, adopted, given away, or that the animal died or was euthanized. Animal shelters and rescues must also record how an animal is acquired, such as stray, relinquished, abandoned, seized, etc. This is because the method of acquisition can lead to additional requirements. For example, a stray animal is required to be held 3 full business days before it is considered to be owned by the animal shelter and able to be adopted out. This would also be considered any other significant information. If you maintain animals other than dogs and cats, you can identify these animals by lot, as long as the origin of the animals can be identified. These lots can be commingled as long as the records include all origins of the commingled lot. Additionally, the records for each lot must still include the acquisition information, disposition information, animal description information, and dates as described in the previous slides. Please note that there are additional documentation requirements for facilities that are not included in the KAR 9-18-7 records regulation we discussed here. This presentation does not cover all record-keeping requirements contained in the Kansas Pet Animal Act statutes and regulations. For example, this presentation does not address documentation demonstrating that adequate veterinary care is provided to each animal, as required under KSA 47-1701-DD and KAR 9-18-21. This presentation also does not address record-keeping requirements related to the use of pet animal foster homes. In addition, this presentation does not cover records required to demonstrate compliance with applicable spay and neuter requirements. These topics are addressed separately in other guidance materials and training modules. You can always contact your inspector if you have additional questions about KPAA requirements. If you need a printed copy of the Kansas Pet Animal Act mailed to you, contact our office at the phone number or email address shown on this slide, 785-564-6605, or kda.afi@ks.gov. Thank you.